Jiang Siki's group is in a censor stew. Her bus reports up to 25,000 Cubans might be sent to Russia. This report hasn't been released domestically yet. I'll quickly share the information with you. Let's check it out now. The Purpose report says as many as 25,000 Cubans might fight for Russia in the Ukraine war. This was officially reported to the United States Congress. The key point is these troops aren't regular soldiers sent directly by the Cuban government. Russia is reportedly recruiting people in Cuba and sending them to the battlefield via contracts. Russia is recruiting them, not the Cuban government officially sending troops. If 25,000 people are actually deployed to the front lines, Cubans will make up the largest group of foreign troops fighting in Ukraine. As far as we know, that's a much larger number than the North Korean troops. Since it's confirmed that some Cubans are mercenaries in Ukraine, this information isn't entirely unfounded. In fact, there have been reports of soldiers captured on the battlefield who were found carrying Cuban passports. So why are so many Cubans fighting for Russia? There's only one reason: money. Russia's offers involve sums unimaginable by Cuban standards. They offer a $2,000 monthly salary or about 2.8 million won. With Cuba's average monthly salary at $20, that's almost 100 times higher. In Cuba, life is hard because of power outages, high prices, and food shortages. In this reality, the idea that you can earn $2,000 a month in Russia is an enormous temptation in itself. For those who want to support their families and build a better life, it may seem like a risk worth taking. The way Russia recruits Cubans like this means more than just filling manpower. For Cubans suffering from economic hardship, it's an opportunity for survival, and for Russia, it's new troops and resources needed for the fight. It's also the result of both sides' needs aligning. The problem is that many young Cubans are risking their lives in unfamiliar battlefields. The Cuban government officially distances itself, saying it has nothing to do with this, but many analysts say it's hard to believe they are completely unaware given the scale and movement routes involved. Given Russia and Cuba's long-standing ties since the Cold War, some question if such major troop movements could occur without approval. With up to 25,000 Cubans moving, most believe such large-scale recruitment couldn't happen without Cuban authorities' knowledge or approval. Given the current situation, that argument is even more persuasive. Russia and Cuba are now closer than ever. Now, they've gone beyond diplomatic exchanges and are even joining hands in military cooperation. In fact, the Russian parliament recently officially approved a military cooperation agreement between Russia and Cuba. The agreement includes the objectives of military cooperation, the direction it will take, and even specific forms of implementation. In other words, the two countries have now fully established a legal framework for how they will move militarily in the future. This development seems very familiar. It's almost identical to the moves we saw just before Russia and North Korea signed their military alliance not long ago. Before North Korea and Russia started full-scale military cooperation, they first signed an agreement to create a legal basis. A few months later, the countries officially formed a military alliance. Cuba and Russia's current actions closely resemble those events. This agreement is highly significant. From now on, it's highly likely that the two countries will conduct joint military exercises and support each other with combat equipment or weapons. Furthermore, experts believe that this could even include the deployment of military bases or facilities in the territories of both Cuba and Russia. Given Cuba's geopolitical location, this is more than simple cooperation. Cuba is a country located just about 150 kilometers away from the mainland United States. If Russia were to establish military facilities or missile bases in Cuba, it would be like reliving the nightmares of the Cold War era for the United States. This point is notable because the United States recently announced support for Ukraine with Tomahawk missiles. From Russia's perspective, it means that American long-range missiles are being deployed close to its own borders. Soon after, Russia ratified a military cooperation deal with Cuba. The timing likely isn't a coincidence. Russia appears to be using the Cuba card in response to America, sending a clear message through this agreement. If the United States puts missiles near our borders, we'll deploy military forces at your doorstep. That's the message they're sending. Some Russian military officials have suggested using Cuba again as a strategic forward base. They're saying that just like during the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962, there could be a situation where Russia's medium and long-range missiles are deployed right in front of the United States. If the United States sends Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine and Russia retaliates by deploying tactical missiles in Cuba, tensions could escalate to Cold War levels. Since the United States East Coast is only a few minutes away from Cuba, just the act of Russia deploying military assets in that region would completely change America's security calculations. Looking at all these moves, even if the Cuban government claims they are not involved, it's hard to avoid the suspicion that they are actually acting in close coordination with Russia. the troop size of 25,000, the approval of the agreement by the Russian Duma, and even the timing of the United States considering support for Tomahawk missiles. All these elements are interconnected in a single sequence of events. Right now, Cuba is neither a mere observer nor a victim. It stands as another key pillar playing an important role in Russia's strategic calculations. Russia plans to invest about $1 billion, 1.4 trillion won in Cuba by 2030. Cuba's economy is struggling because of United States sanctions and other reasons. To solve this, Russia is expected to continue its cooperative relationship with Cuba by investing in various areas, such as Cuba's oil infrastructure, and providing support. Of course, we'll have to wait and see whether Russia will actually invest, but it does seem certain that the relationship between Cuba and Russia is becoming closer. Phobos says Russia sees recruiting many foreign mercenaries as a highly beneficial strategy for clear reasons. Russia is not obligated to provide social compensation or take national responsibility for foreign mercenaries killed or injured in battle. Since they aren't Russian citizens, there's no need to pay pensions to their families, and it lowers the risk of domestic backlash over the war. Even within Russia, fatigue is growing significantly due to the prolonged war. Countless young Russians are losing their lives on the front lines, and their parents and families are expressing anger toward the government. If foreign mercenaries fight instead, the story changes. With fewer Russians saying, "Our sons have died," controlling public opposition to the war will become easier. The Putin regime finds this structure highly appealing, and hiring foreign mercenaries is also more cost-effective. Russia is currently in a wartime economy, but domestic prices are soaring, and the cost of the war has become unbearable. They can, however, contract foreign mercenaries at a relatively low cost. For youth in Cuba, Central Asia, and Africa, $2,000 a month is life-changing, but for Russia, it's less than the cost of fighter jet parts. In the end, Russia is basically using a small amount of money to put foreign young people on the front lines as cannon fodder. As a result, the makeup of the battlefield is changing completely. As of July 2025, according to the list of prisoners secured by the Ukrainian side, 49% of Russian military prisoners, almost half, are foreigners. Their nationalities are diverse, with people from Cuba, Central Asia, Africa, and other continents fighting for Russia. This is a symbolic figure showing that the current war in Ukraine is not simply a fight between Russia and Ukraine, but has in fact become a multinational war involving several authoritarian countries. But the reason Russia had no choice but to take this approach is because they suffered such enormous losses in military strength that it's hard to even imagine. Russian military internal documents were leaked, revealing detailed records of soldiers killed, wounded, and missing from January to August 2025. The contents were shocking. Official records show 86,744 killed, 33,996 missing, and 158,529 wounded, 280,000 Russian military casualties in 8 months. These numbers are hard for Russia to manage, and after 3 years of war, total casualties are probably much higher. Because of internal censorship, Russia doesn't disclose specific statistics, but the British Ministry of Defense estimates Russian military casualties have exceeded 1 million. Russia hasn't suffered this many casualties in any war since World War II. Because of these massive human losses, Russia is in a desperate situation where it needs to replenish its manpower. However, there are no more draftees coming from within the country. A forced conscription order would cause public outrage and risk destabilizing society, which is why the Putin regime is focusing more on overseas matters. Russia now relies heavily on hiring foreign mercenaries with money to address its manpower shortage. In Africa, poor youth, in Central Asia, unemployed workers, and in South America, those facing economic hardship are accepting Russia's offers. Once they sign a contract for a $2,000 salary Russian citizenship and family compensation, they stop being workers and become soldiers. This setup benefits Russia greatly. Foreigners fight, die, and take the blame for them. Internal dissatisfaction in Russia decreases, and the war can continue, but this is only the calculation of the Putin regime. On the battlefield, many foreign mercenaries are sent to the front lines unequipped, their lives treated as disposable. And if these foreign mercenaries die, there's no reason to pay their salaries anymore. In the end, the reason Russia is increasing the number of foreign mercenaries is not for humanitarian reasons or international cooperation, but as a cold-blooded survival strategy to thoroughly minimize its own losses. Right now, Russia is shedding money instead of blood, and as a result, young people from other countries are falling in their place. Currently, cooperation between Cuba and Russia is taking place closely. What do you think about the current situation? Please let us know in the comments. That's it for this video. Thanks.